Imagine this. You've placed your trust, your time, and your energy into someone, a woman you admire, perhaps even love, and then in some way she lets you down. Maybe it's through her words, her actions, or even her silence. At that moment, you feel the pang of disappointment, and the instinctual reaction is to lash out, to show your frustration, to demand an explanation. But what if I told you that's the worst thing you could? Emotional regulation is the foundation upon which strength is built. A man who cannot control his emotions is a man who has surrendered his power to the world around him. If you react impulsively to disappointment, you are exposing your deepest vulnerabilities to someone who may not have your best interests at heart. Anger, frustration, resentment. These emotions, when unchecked, do not serve you. They enslave you. The ability to remain composed in the face of emotional turmoil is the mark of a man who has dominion over himself. When you allow disappointment to dictate your reaction, you reveal that your sense of stability is fragile. You are telling the world, and more importantly yourself, that you are at the mercy of external circumstances. That is not strength. That is not leadership. A man who is truly powerful does not waver when things do not go his way. He absorbs the chaos, he processes it, and he responds in a manner that aligns with his highest values, not his momentary frustration. A reactionary man is a predictable man. Predictability is a weakness in the game of life. The moment you become predictable, you become easy to manipulate. When a woman knows exactly how you will respond to disappointment, she holds the power. She understands the buttons to push, the words to say, and the actions to take to provoke a response. That is not the position you want to be in. The strongest men are those who can stare into the storm without flinching, without allowing the winds of emotion to bend their will. Control over oneself is the greatest control of all. If you cannot master your own mind, you will forever be a slave to the minds of others. If you allow yourself to be emotionally rattled every time you feel slighted, you are no different from a leaf tossed by the wind, directionless, unstable, at the mercy of forces beyond your control. A man must be the mountain, not the leaf. The mountain does not tremble when the storm arrives. It simply exists, unmoved, unwavering, unbreakable. The moment you react emotionally, you forfeit your strength. You are handing over your power to the situation, to the person who triggered the reaction, to the very force that is testing you. Strength is not found in outbursts, in shouting, in proving a point through sheer volume. Strength is found in silence, in stillness, in the unwavering presence of a man who knows his worth does not hinge on external validation. Men who lack emotional control destroy their own dignity. They lose respect, not only from those around them, but from themselves. They allow their emotions to dictate their decisions, leading them into regret, into unnecessary conflict, into situations where they weaken their own position. A man who can walk away from disappointment with composure is a man who commands respect without demanding it. He does not need to fight for his dignity. He carries it effortlessly. When you react, you play into the hands of those who seek to test your limits. But when you accept, when you remain calm, when you do not flinch, you become something else entirely. You become an enigma. You become a force that cannot be predicted, that cannot be controlled. And that right there is where true power lies. A man who cannot be emotionally manipulated is a man who is feared, respected, and ultimately followed. Self-mastery is the ultimate weapon. A man who controls his emotions is a man who controls his destiny. He does not allow disappointment to define him. He does not allow the actions of another to determine his state of mind. He operates from a place of internal strength, a foundation so solid that no external force can shake it. That is the kind of power that cannot be taken away. Emotional regulation is the art of maintaining your frame under pressure. It is the ability to stand firm when everything around you is designed to make you fall. It is the discipline of not allowing your emotions to dictate your next move, but instead using logic, wisdom, and foresight. It is the recognition that true power is not found in reacting, but in mastering the art of non-reactivity. There is a reason why the greatest warriors, the greatest leaders, the greatest thinkers of history have all been men who mastered their emotions. They understood that emotion is energy, and uncontrolled energy is chaos. But directed energy, controlled and harnessed, is the force that shapes the world. A man who cannot regulate his emotions is a man who fights battles that do not need to be fought. A man who can regulate his emotions chooses his battles with precision and wins them without even drawing his sword. To react emotionally is to lose control. To lose control is to lose respect. To lose respect is to lose influence. And to lose influence is to lose everything. Every time you react, you are reinforcing a pattern of weakness. Every time you remain composed, you are reinforcing a pattern of strength. The choice is always yours. A man's worth is measured by his ability to remain unfazed in the face of adversity. If you crumble at every instance of disappointment, how can you ever expect to stand tall when life throws its hardest tests at you? The man who is moved by every slight, every disappointment, every rejection is a man who has built his foundation on sand. But the man who stands firm, who does not flinch, who absorbs the disappointment and continues forward with grace and power, that is the man who builds his foundation on stone. Power does not belong to the loudest man in the room. Power belongs to the man who does not need to prove himself with words, with reactions, with desperate attempts to be heard. Power belongs to the man whose silence speaks louder than any argument. It belongs to the man who knows that his emotional state is his responsibility, not the responsibility of anyone else. A woman, or anyone for that matter, cannot shake a man who has mastered himself. She can try to provoke, to disappoint, to stir chaos, but if he remains steady, she loses all leverage. That is where the real advantage is found, not in fighting for control, but in rendering external control meaningless. You are not moved because you do not need to be moved. You do not react because you do not need to react. You do not engage in chaos because you are beyond chaos. When you master your emotions, you become untouchable. The world will test you. People will try to shake you. Women will disappoint you, but none of it will matter because you have already chosen your response before the situation even occurs. You have already decided that nothing outside of you will dictate what happens inside of you. True strength is found in stillness. True strength is found in the ability to take the weight of disappointment and remain unshaken. True strength is found in the quiet power of a man who knows his value is not defined by anyone else's actions. Be that man. Be the one who does not react, who does not waver, who does not give his power away. Because in the end, the man who controls himself controls everything. Acceptance is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of psychological control. When someone expects a reaction and instead receives calmness, they are left in a state of confusion. The moment you accept what was meant to hurt you, you take away its power. The world operates on emotional transactions, and when you refuse to pay with your peace, you break the cycle. A man who reacts emotionally is a man who is predictable. Predictability is a flaw in the game of influence. If your emotions can be read like an open book, you become easy to manipulate. A person who cannot be controlled is a person who controls the dynamic of every interaction. When disappointment is met with indifference, the one causing it is forced to reevaluate their approach. People expect resistance. They expect frustration. They expect you to fight for an explanation, to demand validation, to crumble in the face of emotional disappointment. When you do none of these things, you create a reality they did not anticipate. That shift in expectation forces a person to reflect, to question, to seek understanding. That is the leverage of acceptance. Control is not found in dominance, but in unpredictability. A man who can stand in the face of disappointment and refuse to be shaken is a man who holds the upper hand in every situation. The moment you accept the disappointment without resistance, you place the responsibility of reflection on the other person. They are now left alone with their actions, with no reaction to justify their behavior. Silence is more powerful than argument. When you refuse to engage in an emotional battle, you strip the other person of their ability to influence you. A reaction gives them control. Non-reaction takes it away. A man who does not need to fight for his place is a man who has already won. The more someone expects resistance and finds acceptance instead, the more they are forced to reconsider their own actions. Psychological leverage is built on the foundation of emotional mastery. The world belongs to those who can remain unmoved in moments of expected turmoil. A man who is calm in disappointment is a man who forces the other person into introspection. A person cannot justify their actions when there is no resistance to push against. They are left to wrestle with their own choices, their own words, their own behavior. A woman cannot control a man who does not need to prove himself. If you meet her disappointment with frustration, you give her validation. If you meet it with acceptance, you give her something far more powerful, confusion. She expects a reaction. She expects emotion. She expects a loss of control. But when you give her none of it, You force her to confront herself. You become the mirror that makes her see what she may not want to see. The strongest man in the room is not the one who shouts the loudest. It is the one who does not need to shout at all. The greatest power is in restraint, in the ability to choose silence when words would only weaken your position. The moment you master acceptance, you become unshakable. The moment you refuse to be emotionally swayed, you become untouchable. A reaction is an admission of influence. The second you show that something has disturbed your peace, you give it authority over you. But when you refuse to react, when you remain grounded, you make it clear that your peace is not up for negotiation. You communicate without a single word that your emotional state is under your command. Disappointment is a test. It reveals who you are beneath the surface. A weak man collapses under it. A strong man absorbs it and moves forward without losing his center. A woman who expects you to be shaken by her actions loses all control when you refuse to be. She is left with nothing to fight against, no reaction to feed off, no validation for her expectation. Acceptance is not submission, it is dominance in its purest form. It is the ability to stand firm while the world expects you to fall. It is the ability to remain unaffected while others try to provoke you. It is the quiet confidence of a man who does not need to beg for understanding. The moment you accept without resistance, you force others to confront their own behavior. Power is the ability to remain unshaken. The moment you react, you are owned by the situation. The moment you refuse, you own the situation. When you accept what is meant to disturb you, you rob it of its ability to do so. You turn disappointment into fuel, into wisdom, into unbreakable composure. The person who expected you to lose control is left questioning their own actions instead. There is no greater form of power than self-restraint. A man who does not need to prove his worth is a man who already possesses it. A woman who expects to shake you will only be shaken herself when she finds you unmoved. She will not understand it. She will not expect it. And that confusion will force her into self-reflection in a way that arguments never could. A man who remains in control of himself remains in control of the situation. The second you let disappointment dictate your actions, you lose your place of power. The second you meet disappointment with calm acceptance, you shift the entire dynamic. The one who expected a reaction is left confused, uncertain, seeking to understand the silence that speaks louder than any words. The greatest strength is in the absence of resistance. The moment you fight against what is, you reveal that it has power over you. But when you accept it, you strip it of its influence. You become the immovable force in a world that expects chaos. You become the calm in a storm that was meant to break you. Every action is a test. Every disappointment is a challenge. A weak man reacts. A strong man remains composed. The woman who tests you will only respect the man who does not falter. The moment you prove that you do not need her validation, she will seek yours. The moment you show that you cannot be emotionally shaken, she will question why. Silence creates uncertainty. Acceptance creates power. When you refuse to give someone the reaction they seek, you force them to sit with their own behavior. They must now face the reality of their actions without the distraction of your resistance. That is how you win without fighting. That is how you turn disappointment into influence. The man who does not chase understanding is the man who commands it. The second you demand an explanation, you reveal dependence. The second you walk away with composure, you show that you are beyond it. That is how true power is established. Not through force, not through reaction, but through the quiet mastery of self. There is no greater advantage than being unreadable. The moment you react, you become predictable. The moment you accept, you become a mystery. A person cannot control what they do not understand. A woman cannot manipulate a man who does not need validation. That is the ultimate power. A presence so grounded that it forces others into reflection instead of conflict. Disappointment is an illusion meant to provoke a response. The moment you refuse to engage, you shatter its hold over you. A woman expects you to fight for her approval, for an explanation, for closure. But the man who does not need any of these things is the man who holds all the power. The moment you accept, you shift the entire game. No one can control a man who controls himself. No one can manipulate a man who does not seek validation. No one can shake a man who remains calm in the face of disappointment. That is the ultimate strength. That is the highest form of power. That is the leverage that turns silence into a force more powerful than any argument ever could do. True power is found in the ability to walk away without hesitation. A man who is attached to the outcome is a man who can be controlled. The moment you need something from someone, you place yourself in a position of submission. The man who cannot detach himself from disappointment is a man who has surrendered his freedom. A man who understands his value does not beg, does not plead, does not negotiate his worth. He simply accepts what is and moves forward with unshakable certainty. A woman cannot respect a man she can control. If she can manipulate his emotions, if she can dictate his reactions, if she can break his composure, she will see him as beneath her. The man who is unbothered by disappointment, who refuses to let it dictate his actions, who meets it with silent indifference, forces her to reconsider her own behavior. She is left questioning herself rather than questioning him. The highest form of strength is the ability to remain calm when the world expects you to break. The moment you react, you become predictable. Predictability is weakness. A man who does not react is a man who forces others to confront their own instability. He does not chase explanations. He does not demand closure. He does not need validation. His presence alone is enough. Disappointment is a tool used to test your resolve. A weak man crumbles under it. A strong man absorbs it and moves forward without hesitation. A woman will challenge you to see if you are worth following. She will push you to see if you will break. She will create conflict to see if you can handle the weight of leadership. If you falter, if you react, if you let it disturb your peace, she will lose all respect for you. The ability to remain still in the face of disappointment is the mark of a man who has mastered himself. When you expect nothing, you cannot be shaken. When you rely on no one, you cannot be controlled. A man who does not seek validation is a man who commands it. The moment you refuse to react, you shift the dynamic in your favor. The one who is meant to test you is now being tested herself. A woman is drawn to a man she cannot fully understand. If you are predictable, if you react emotionally, if you wear your insecurities on your sleeve, you make yourself ordinary. An ordinary man is easily replaced. A man who remains mysterious, who refuses to be easily read, who does not seek approval, creates intrigue. That intrigue is what separates the exceptional from the forgettable. Control is an illusion given to those who react. If you can be provoked, you are owned. If you can be swayed by emotions, you are a pawn in someone else's game. A man who walks away when necessary, who does not allow himself to be dragged into emotional chaos, is a man who owns himself fully. The world cannot shake him. A woman cannot weaken him. He remains a fortress in a world of shifting sands. A woman respects a man who does not place her above his purpose. If she senses that her disappointment can shift his focus, she will unconsciously lose attraction. If she sees that her tests do not shake him, that his mission remains above all else, she will be drawn to him in ways she cannot explain. A man who needs nothing from a woman is a man who gains everything. Silence is the greatest response to manipulation. When you do not argue, when you do not justify, when you do not explain, you force the other person to sit with their own thoughts. You remove the energy from the conflict. You take away the reaction they were hoping for. A woman cannot fight a battle that does not exist. The moment you refuse to engage, you render the game useless. A man who does not seek approval cannot be controlled. If you are willing to lose, you cannot be held hostage. If you are unafraid of walking away, you have the ultimate leverage. When a woman sees that you will not beg, that you will not plead, that you will not lower yourself to meet her expectations, she will either rise to meet your standard or remove herself from your path. Either way, you win. A man's value is not determined by how well he reacts, but by how well he remains unmoved. The moment you meet disappointment with indifference, you remove its power. The moment you accept what is, without resistance, you shift the entire dynamic. A man who cannot be emotionally shaken is a man who forces the world to adjust to him rather than the other way around. There is no strength in chasing. There is no power in begging. There is no wisdom in reacting. A man who commands respect does so not through force, but through presence. He does not argue for his worth, he lives it. He does not demand recognition, he assumes it. A woman respects the man who does not falter, the man who does not allow himself to be moved by temporary emotions. A woman will respect the man who can stand in the storm without flinching. If she sees that her actions dictate his emotions, she will see him as weak. If she sees that he remains unchanged, that his value is non-negotiable, she will either rise to meet him or fall away. A man who understands his worth does not need to prove it. He simply embodies it. If you react, you expose your weakness. If you chase, you lose your position. If you demand validation, you forfeit your power. A woman may test you, but she will only respect the man who passes without effort. The moment you make it clear that your peace is untouchable, that your purpose is greater than any single person, you establish yourself as a man who cannot be moved. A weak man is ruled by external forces. A strong man rules himself. A woman does not respect the man she can control. She respects the man who remains a mystery, who does not reveal his emotions easily, who does not give his power away in moments of disappointment. The less you react, the more control you hold. The less you seek approval, the more you command respect. A man who cannot walk away is a man who is already lost. If you are afraid of losing someone, you have already given them control. A woman can only admire a man who stands firm in his own value, who does not depend on her approval to feel whole. When you accept disappointment without resistance, you communicate that you are beyond manipulation, beyond games, beyond emotional traps. If a woman senses that her disappointment weakens you, she will test you further. If she sees that you remain indifferent, she will be drawn in by your strength. The world respects those who do not flinch under pressure. The moment you let go of the need for validation, you become untouchable. The moment you refuse to be emotionally led, you become a force that cannot be ignored. A woman follows a man who does not seek to follow her emotions. She is drawn to the man who stands on his own, who does not crumble under the weight of her expectation. If you react, you lower yourself. If you accept, you rise above. The moment you make it clear that your peace is not negotiable, that your emotions are under your control, you redefine the entire interaction. A man who is in control of himself is in control of every situation. The moment you react, you give away your advantage. The moment you accept without resistance, you force the other person to question themselves. That is the essence of power. That is the foundation of respect. That is the difference between the weak and the strong, between the controlled and the untouchable. You said, "Give me conclusion of intelligence." ChatGPT said, "A man who reacts is a man who is controlled. A man who remains still is a man who holds power." The world does not respect those who beg for validation, who crumble under pressure, who allow emotions to dictate their actions. The highest form of strength is found in the ability to accept without resistance, to detach without hesitation, to remain unmoved in the face of disappointment. A woman will test a man not because she seeks to break him, but because she seeks to find his limits. If he can be controlled, he is not worthy of leading. If he can be shaken, he is not worthy of respect. If he can be manipulated, he is not worthy of trust. A man who stands firm, who does not allow external forces to dictate his internal state, who meets every challenge with unshakable composure, is a man who commands admiration without ever needing to demand it. There is no power in seeking approval. There is no wisdom in reacting to chaos. There is no strength in proving yourself to those who should already see your worth. A man who understands this becomes untouchable. He does not argue, he does not chase, he does not justify, he simply exists as an immovable force. And the world is forced to adjust to him. If you do not fear loss, you cannot be controlled. If you do not seek validation, you cannot be manipulated. If you do not react, you cannot be weakened. The moment you accept disappointment without resistance, you shift the entire dynamic in your favor. The one who accepted to shake you is now left questioning herself. The one who sought to test you is now uncertain of her own position. A true man of value does not need to prove himself. His presence speaks for him. His silence is more powerful than any argument. His indifference is his greatest weapon. His ability to accept without reacting is his ultimate advantage. He does not lower himself to meet others at their level. He forces them to rise to his. Master yourself and you master everything. Control your emotions and you control your reality. Detach from the need for validation and you become truly free. A man who understands this is a man who cannot be defeated. A man who lives by this is a man who commands respect without ever asking for it. That is the essence of true power. That is the foundation of unshakable strength. That is the path to becoming the man the world follows, rather than the man who follows the world.